Well, guys, I want to welcome you to Overtime, where we're taking Sunday's conversation a little bit further. And this Sunday, we are in a series about hope for the holidays, talking about hope. And I'm really excited to introduce you somebody who has some things to say about hope. And so today we've got Jeff Henderson. And Jeff Henderson, the cool thing is, Jeff, you have been a mentor from a distance. Certainly, you are an author. I've read your book. I've listened to you teach. I've listened to your leadership, and in fact, For Austin Behind Us was inspired by you, and that has inspired us to do a lot of things here in Austin. And I am just really grateful that you've taken the time and you're going to talk to us a little bit about hope.
It's great to see you again, Buck, and a big fan of Northpoint Austin. In fact, two of my favorite T-shirts are for Austin shirts that I did a couple years ago when I came to preach. So I love being with you all. It was so much fun, and just love what you're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, man. So I know a little bit about you. I've been on the other side of you and your leadership for many years, but I would love you just to give us a little insight, like, who's Jeff Henderson? Like, who are you? What are you about? What are you doing? What are you up to?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, my wife, Wendy, and I have been married for 24 years. We have a daughter, Jessie, who's 21, a son, Cole, who's 19. They both go to Samford University in Birmingham. And
oh, wow.
So they're both home for the holidays, and it's great to see them again. They were actually able to stay the whole first semester in Birmingham, so we're excited about that. Wow. And I grew up a preacher's kid, Buck, and promised myself I would never, ever work at a church, and just finished 17 years working at a church. I was the pastor of 3 churches: Buckhead Church, which was Northpoint's first multi-site church, and then 2 Gwinnett Church locations. Before that, I spent a number of years in marketing and advertising with Chick-fil-A and the Braves and a couple other organizations. But over the course of my time at Gwinnett Church, we began to notice wonderful churches like you that were taking the 4 message and implementing it in their community. And then when the book came out, opportunity to share this message with the business community just began to grow. Wow. So recently stepped down in September to really help serve businesses and churches with the 4 message. So that's what I'm doing.
That's exciting. Now, what's the connection? You said Samford University? Mm-hmm. Is that a family connection, or is versus like?
No, so I went to Georgia. My wife went to Auburn, and
wow.
We were both recruiting with there. But our kids had several mentors that went to Samford, and when they both saw it, they were like, "This is where we want to go." So it's a great school. We're excited that they're there, and but Jessie's a senior, so this is their only year together, and so she's trying to figure out what she does next.
That's so cool.
Aren't we all? So
yeah, I mean that is like the season. We're smack in that. Yeah. Well, hey, I'm curious. So the 4's behind me. You're leading the 4 company. So like the whole inspiration for that, like when you were sitting there, was it like a light bulb moment? Was it like, I think this whole concept of 4, like, I'm just curious before we kind of jump into hope and where we're going today. Sure. Where did that originate?
Well, I think any organization needs to ask the question, what are we known for? And what do we want to be known for? And in the early days of Gwinnett Church, we weren't known for anything because we didn't even have a name, right? We were just, it was just a startup. So we said, what is, generally speaking, what is the church, the Big C church, known for? And someone in that meeting said, well, for many people, they're more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. We ought to be known for what we're for. And that was the light bulb moment for me.
Yeah.
That, wow, okay. That's what we're going to be known for. And so that message, we bought this property. We put a sign out there that said #4Gwinnett. Didn't have a church website or anything. It was just that. And I got some feedback such as, well, how are they going to know it's a church when they drive by that building of that property that has nothing on it but trees? And I said, exactly. They're not going to know. They're going to figure it out. And we're going to send vision carriers into our community with T-shirts that say 4 Gwinnett, so that when people ask them, hey, what's being built up there? They can share it's a church. And the reason we're building a church is for many people more familiar with what the church is against. So that message really began to resonate. And then we saw wonderful church leaders like you and churches like Northpoint Austin begin to take it and do even greater things with it. And then I began to be invited by business leaders to talk about it. And from a business angle, it's no longer about being the best company in the world. It's about being the best company for the world. And that really started resonating with businesses because they need to know what they want to be known for. And so as I began to speak, and I went on a 24-city business breakfast tour and talking to business leaders, and it really became solidified as I talked to business leaders. They said, hey, this is giving us language. This is kind of what we do, but we didn't have a language for it. And that's given us a vision for it. So, and I love being a pastor in the business world and kind of going undercover, if you will. And I can preach on Sunday and I can do marketing on Monday. And so anyway, that was kind of the impetus between our recent transition to let's go serve the business world and the church world at the same time.
Yeah, man, I love that. What I love about what you did is I think it brings a lot of clarity. Those questions that, like, as an organizational leader, maybe you love them, but you don't love them because they force you to think. Yeah. And they're like really clarifying. So like, what are we for? Well, that's a great question because it's like, gosh, I got to think now. And then we got to like contemplate, maybe, whiteboard a little bit, but it clarifies so much. So, one of the things I really want to thank you for is, like, for us, we've had so many moments of clarification, like, who are we for? We are for the community. Well, should we say, how should we say that? So clarifying. So
again, you guys are helping lead the way on that. And it's something that it's a daily challenge.
Yeah.
Leaders are repeaters, and vision rarely repeated is quickly forgotten. So as leaders, sometimes, and those of you that are watching this, if you're a business leader or nonprofit leader, or even a leader in your home, you may think, well, I thought I said this. Why doesn't everybody get it? And so it's not that you're a bad leader. It's that you've got to stay on message. And that's why I love seeing 4 over your shoulder. You just got to stay on message.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that, man. Well, I know, so we're talking about hope in this series, and you have been through life, and you've got enough life experience to know how, hope fits into life, how hope has, been an empowerment. I'm sure there's been times where you may have lost hope. So when you just think about hope in general, like, what do you think about? What comes to your mind? And, why do you think it's so important in terms of just life in general?
Well, that's where I am right now. I mean, you don't leave a steady job in a global pandemic to start a brand new company.
Yeah.
I think the telltale sign for me is if when we ask the question, what are you looking forward to? And if there's nothing that you're looking forward to, then there is an absence of hope there. And so I think it's back to your earlier point, it seems like a really easy question, but what are you looking forward to is a harder question than it may appear. And for me, I don't want to get too, super spiritual, but it really is Jesus. If Jesus is alive, there is still hope. And if we believe that, and we believe that Jesus is alive, and I'm not trying to negate all the challenges that we are all facing, but ultimately at the end of the day, the foundation is Jesus. Hope is a person. Hope is Jesus. Jesus is alive. And at some point we hit that foundation. And we won't crack through it because he is our foundation. And so, obviously I believe in hopeful habits, hopeful strategies. We're going to talk about all of that, but ultimately I believe hope is a person in Jesus.
Right. I love that. And I mean, that's what I was talking about on Sunday. Yeah. In terms of how important that is. I mean, there's a lot of things we're tempted to put hope in, but there's such uncertainty in that. And we can increase the probability of certainty by doing certain habits and all those things. But, one of the points I made is that this world is random, that there's an unpredictability around it. And the most certain thing we can do is exactly what you're saying is to put the foundation of our hope in Christ. And I love that.
And that's really, my friend Michael Hyatt says, what did this season make possible in terms of 2020? And as hard as it has been, a lot of the things that we've placed our hope in that has maybe potentially been removed, as hard as that is, and as challenging as that is, and as painful as that is, in some ways it makes possible the reality that maybe we placed our ultimate hope in somewhere that couldn't bear the weight of that.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that. So you mentioned when it comes to hope, I mean, at the onset of that question, that you're starting this new company. The Ford company, I mean, you've taken, some of the security of your previous position, and now you're like stepping out there. And so how do you feel like hope plays itself out in terms of, this entrepreneurial side, this starting a new company? How does hope impact that? And then just being an organizational leader, where does hope play itself out there? And then in terms of the overall culture. So for organizational leaders, business leaders, that are either thinking about taking this step or are in the midst of kind of your role, how does hope play itself out in there?
It's interesting. One of the most frequent comments I've received in my transition has been from people saying, hey, thanks for giving us permission to dream, because to see you leaving something to go towards something that is starting all over, that means that's still possible now. Now, but many of them are saying, I'm not going to do it right now, but thank you for going.
You take the risk, baby.
Right, you take the risk.
Yep.
But if you look at any major crisis like this, and obviously we haven't had a crisis like 2020, but let's say 2008 and the real estate crash, the stock market crash, if you will, the Great Recession. If you look at it from a business standpoint, the businesses that actually invested in that time and still had organizational hope were the ones that got out of it faster. And that's not preacher talk, that's data, hardcore business talk. And so I think investing in yourself in this season and understanding that there's a lot that we can't control, but there are some things that we can control. And we'll talk about this as we get a little further along, but I think there are habits for hope that we can implement in our lives that can bring about bring about hope in our lives if we have established habits in our lives. And so if we're always looking for what's going wrong in the world, then we'll find that. If we're looking for what's happening right in the world, then we'll find that as well. And as for me, this year, I've probably watched less news than ever before. Because I quickly, in the early, when the pandemic hit, I was trying to figure out what's happening and quickly realized I don't think anybody knew what was happening. We're all kind of guessing at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we bury our head in the sand by any means, but a constant barrage of breaking news was breaking me. And I just had to say, you know what, I've got to focus on things that are unchanging, principles that are unchanging, a person that is unchanging in Jesus, and not knowing what comes around the corner. And the other thing I've realized is, when people ask me how I'm doing, I'm like, it depends on this moment. Right now, I have no idea what's coming around the corner.
Right.
But I do know that what's coming around the corner. Here's the good news about 2020. If we can get to this point, and have gotten through all that we gotten through, hey, we're getting there. So I think there are, for me, the thing that I have heard is, thanks for giving us permission to keep dreaming. But this is, here's the thing I do know is, and it's not trying to make light of, and I'm not saying that anyone should do something foolish or wrong. My decision was really bathed in prayer. I had mentors around me. I got a green light from everybody. But at the end of the day, I'm so excited that 10 years from now, I'm going to have a great story to say, hey, when the global pandemic hit, I left, a certain job to help start this thing. And here's what happened. And I don't really know what's going to happen, but I do believe that there is hope to know that I'm following Jesus. And that's my best strategy, simply spending time with him and following him.
Yeah. And I love what you said, because I think, especially as a point lead, organizational leader, I mean, that's infectious. And if people see that hope in you, if people see some of the habits you were talking about, which I know we're going to get into a little bit more, but just the idea to go, hey, what is draining my reservoir of hope? And if I'm tuning into the news all the time, and that's going to come out, like you're going to have a, staff meeting, you're going to have a discussion, a water cooler conversation where you're like, hey, I know enough, so I'm informed, but I just can't keep doing that because it's just draining my hope. And if I'm going to lead you guys, if we're going to, go discover some things, be innovative together, we've got to maintain hope. And that is not something that does maintain hope.
Right.
I love that.
It's okay. I think sometimes in Christian world and church world, we feel like to fight for hope means that something's wrong or we don't have enough faith. No, you got to fight for this. You have to remain hopeful. It's a battle.
Yeah.
And to have a strategy for hope doesn't make it inauthentic. That's having a strategy for it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, you've mentioned a couple times, 2020, it's a year that, there's a curiosity inside of me to go, what are history books going to say about this moment?
Yeah.
And, what are they going to write? And what are they going to write about the church, about, politics, about culture, about all of that kind of stuff. But 2020 certainly has been a tough year for individuals. It's been certainly a tough year for our culture. It's been a tough year, not for everybody, but I think I've heard quite a bit of stories as families. And so as you think about, where we're at and all we know is today, looking back on 2020, seeing the things that you've seen, where do you feel like, we need hope individually, we need hope as a family, we need hope as a culture? Like where would you lean into? What would you say, like, man, if I was going to give some advice, I'd lean in right here?
Well, I do have concerns for middle school and high school students for the level of anxiety and depression that's really skyrocketing among, and then we've had to shift everything for a large part to online, which, I'm all for technology. We're actually leveraging technology right now. But I think technology has been seen as a very primary reason for the rise of anxiety among middle school and high school students. So I think we've got to get around, in fact, I was talking to a company today, we've got to get around digital wellness. And I really like this phrase, digital wellness. It doesn't mean that we ignore technology, because if we ignored technology, you and I wouldn't be able to talk, Buck.
Right.
But at the same time, there is a balance there of a digital wellness. And how am I leveraging, for example, this conversation is bringing me hope today, not because of anything I'm saying, but because of being with you and being with Northpoint Austin. So technology can be an opportunity for us to have hope, but it can also bleed that hope away. And so for me, that kind of having a hopeful strategy going into every day is helpful. But I think as it relates to our society and our culture, I'm concerned. I think we're going to see alarming rates of anxiety and depression, not only among middle school and high school students, but among adults as well. And to, I think, have the church rally around that and to be, a beacon of hope. And like Northpoint Austin is doing, and saying, hey, not only are we going to do something on Sunday, we're going to do something called overtime and keep talking about it. And let's be able to leverage technology for that. But we've got to be honest and real. And the cool thing, I think, again, another opportunity here is maybe before this, everyone was a little bit distant. And once we kind of get back into gathering more frequently, if you will, maybe in 2021, I heard a friend the other day say, I can't wait to count down 2020 because I'm ready for 2021. I thought, I understand that, but this may be a depressing thought, but I know we're talking about hope. But my question was, what if 2021, at least the first part, isn't as different as you might want it to be?
Right.
And you can still have hope. And I do believe 2021 will be better than 2020. And I think, Buck, that's an important thought as well, is 2021, do you have hope that it will be better? And I think sometimes when we have such a hard season like this, we brace ourselves and say, I've been hurt before, I'm just not going to go there anymore,
Right.
And then hope becomes something that's so distant because we're trying to protect ourselves. So I think the church has an extraordinary opportunity. And again, church may not look exactly the same as it's always been.
Sure.
But that's why doing things like overtime is important. That's why trying different things. But now more than ever, from a financial standpoint, for those that can continue to support what you all are doing, is really important, because I think now more than ever, it's the season to say, hey, Austin, Northpoint Austin is for you. And that's what For Austin is all about. So I think now more than ever, this For Austin message is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, I think it's one of the points you made is looking forward to 2021 and having optimism, like, hey, I'm looking forward to that. But the coolest thing about, a little bit of what I talked about this Sunday is the idea that if your foundation is Christ, regardless of what tomorrow holds, like, Christ will give you clarity. Christ will give you strength. Christ is working all things for the good. Like, when circumstances come your way that are difficult, like, he's working in that. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials, because even though I hoped that January or February or the spring, God is working in that and shaping and molding. And when Christ is our foundation, we're able to receive that. We're able to, participate in that, versus if our hope is on, man, January needs to be awesome. I hope that for sure. But, when our hope is in Christ, he prepares it, for us to experience that, when we get there. So.
Yeah, and it's again, this is why we have faith. This is why Jesus said, "Hey, you're going to have trouble in the world, but take heart." And again, it's not that we can't have difficult moments, bad days. That's all possible because that's authentic. But at the same day, or at the same time, I think this is an opportunity for Jesus followers to lead and point the way, because now more than ever, people are looking and wanting the hope that we have. So this is not a season to shrink back. This is a season to move forward.
Yeah, I love that. So I know you mentioned digital health, or is that what it's called? Digital health or digital?
Well, I like the phrase digital wellness.
Digital wellness. So I think, it's like, and that kind of touches on where I want to go next, because I think, we long for hope. And I think, middle school, the next generation, our students, man, they have been absent of connection. They've been, it's everything digital. So I think in 2021, that's going to be, difficult. But in terms of digital wellness, what are other things that you're feeling or thinking or seeing that just makes hope hard to hold on to, that makes hope difficult or confusing, that it's important to like have this discussion and go, hey, at least let's have a heads up about what we're about to face?
We don't know what tomorrow holds. For example, I had scheduled a breakfast this morning to see, a friend. And then he texted me last night and said, hey, I was with someone who came down with COVID, so let's reschedule. Okay. Well, it took a long time for us to get this scheduled. Who knows when this will be scheduled again? And so that's kind of our world. And yet, ironically, Buck, that's always been the case. I mean,
yeah,
we even when, let's say, the vaccine comes in and the whole thing goes away, it will still be true that you do not know what tomorrow holds.
That's good.
Not to go all preacher on you, but we do know who holds tomorrow. And so that is an opportunity for us, I think, to move forward, in the sense that with so much uncertainty, and then things seem to be changing constantly, right? And I mean, how many dinners have you had canceled, or how many engagements have you had canceled?
Right.
It is constant. And just the constant of, is my throat getting sore? Am I coming down with? So it's, that constant awareness of it. It's why I believe there's a strong connection between spiritual and emotional momentum and physical momentum, in the sense that making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're taking care of your physical health. I think there's connections to physical and spiritual and emotional health, and so I think routines are really important. Again, my friend Michael Hyatt, he owns a business, and he's for a lot of times just working from home, but he gets up, shaves, showers, gets ready as if he's going out the door. And he doesn't go everywhere. He comes right around and comes to his home office like I'm in right now. But just the act of getting dressed and those habits can lead you somewhere. So I think the thing that's been so hard for all of us is we've just been knocked off our routine constantly with things that are out of our control.
Yeah, and I think we're just more acutely aware of it. Like you're saying, it's always been there. But I think, COVID feels like it's exacerbated, elevated, brought to the, front and center, things that we know have been true, but they just seem more true. And then we're a little bit more hypersensitive about other things, and that's additive. And I do think it robs a lot of that hope that we've had. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit, and I'm just curious, so our way forward to go, okay, how do we maintain hope? Like, what do we do in the midst of, it's all in front of us, we're acutely aware of it, but what's our way forward? 2021's coming, God knows what tomorrow holds, and how do we hold on to hope and, maintain that?
Well, I think a principle that has meant a lot to me over the years is we become like those we surround ourselves with. And I think asking the question, who did you spend the most time with in 2020? And then how are you going to, how was that for you? Now, obviously it's like, hey, there's some family members that I have to spend time with, right? So you could probably say that. That's right. But I mean, again, that's where the digital part of this comes in, right? So again, we're not limited necessarily to physical space. And so I think the reality, this phrase social distancing, which I totally appreciate and applaud, I wish they would have called it physical distancing or something, because social distancing is a train wreck if you're just isolating yourself.
Right.
And so who are you, there's the old adage, we become like the 5 people, that we most are with. And who do you want to, so as you look at who you were with in 2020, if it wasn't trending toward a hopeful direction,
Mm-hmm.
then we might have to choose to spend time with people that are going to send us in a more hopeful direction.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important person that we can spend time with is Jesus. And
Mm-hmm.
what is your plan to spend time with Jesus? I love the story in the book of Acts when they looked at Peter and John and said, hey, these are ordinary, unschooled, untrained men, and yet they're doing phenomenal stuff here. What's the difference? Oh, they noticed that they had been with Jesus. They had spent time with Jesus. And so one of our goals collectively for all of us listening to this, I think, should be at some point in 2021, somebody comes up to us and says, you know what, can I tell you something? I've just noticed a deeper sense of hope in you this year. I've just noticed a deeper sense of peace in you this year. What is that? What have you been eating? Or what have you been drinking, right?
Yeah.
And my hope is that we would say, you know what? I've just spent more time with Jesus in 2021 than maybe I did in 2020.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great reasons to hang out with Northpoint Austin. That's these routines and these habits are so important, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're not necessarily just disciplines and habits. They're about spending time with Jesus and letting Jesus do what only Jesus can do. And a lot of that is in small groups, all the stuff that you all do. But at the end of the day, I think my hope, for me at least, in 2021 is that if I run into somebody like this friend that I haven't seen in a while that had to cancel for breakfast, my hope is that when we do get breakfast scheduled again, he'll say, there's something, man, there seems to be even a deeper sense of hope and peace about you. What is that? And I just want to go all in on spending as much time with Jesus as I possibly can. And that doesn't mean necessarily, an hour Bible study. It could just be from meeting to meeting going, Lord, all right, here's what's going on. I'm anxious about this today. And I'm just going to release that to you and just say, help me.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love it. In fact, this week or last week when I was thinking about Sunday's message, like exactly what you were saying, I was thinking about, what happens when like a boulder of life, a circumstance of life comes and it wipes you out. And it feels like my reservoir is empty, and it's real and it's human. And we should give ourselves permission to go, yeah, I mean, that was such a big catalytic thing that came your way. And one of the greatest things I would just say to that is if that happens, then that's where, Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, 2 are better than one. When one falls down, the other can help him up. So you can borrow my hope. So for example, if something came your way, Jeff, and, man, your hope has been devastated. It's gone. And that's the way you feel, perhaps because we're in community, we're connected, we're hanging out with one another. You can take my hope and you can borrow my hope, which can restore your hope. And so your point about connection, oh my gosh, it is so important, especially since what we've experienced is a lack of in 2020.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I even think the introverts are wanting this now, and I'm an introvert myself. So, but yeah, there's an absence of that right now. And again, that's where the church can be uniquely positioned in such a time as this.
Yeah. Would you say anything else? Like if somebody is listening and they're going, man, Jeff, there has been one of those kind of cataclysmic things that in my life, a tragedy or whatever. And they're listening, they're like, I've lost it. And I've been looking for it, but I've lost hope. I've lost that, to get up and go shave, or to get up and get ready. Is there something that you would lean in and just say to the person who's listening that's where they're at when it comes to hope?
Absolutely. I would say to that person, you're probably in the stages of grief, the 5 stages of grief. We have a tendency to think that grief is only associated with a loved one dying, but you can be the grief of losing a job, the grief of losing a season, the grief of not being able to do what you used to do in terms of getting on a plane and traveling somewhere. Many of my friends are communicators and speakers, and they haven't been, a friend of mine would spend 200 dates on the road every year. Wow. So he didn't do that in 2020. And there was the grief of that. There was the grief of the energy that wasn't going on. So you have to understand where you are in the stages of grief, and you know these, but you've got the denial, you've got the anger that comes with it. And if you don't understand that, grief will go underground and create acts and actions in you. And typically it comes out against the people that are closest to you relationally. And so you've got to be able to understand grief. And so even if it's like, I just don't think I can go shave today or take a shower, that one act, just do that one thing. That is a step forward. And so I think to never negate a small act of stepping forward. And again, it may just be getting out of your PJs, getting a shower, and getting into quote unquote work clothes. That in and of itself, I think, would be a huge deal. So it's those one small step at a time of hope, of moving forward. And I love what one of my mentors, John Maxwell, says. He told me this recently, that he never had a clear vision, but he just kept moving forward. And as he kept moving forward, he discovered it. And I think sometimes we are paralyzed because in seasons like this, we feel like there's no hope because we can't see our way out of it. And you're not going to see your way out of it from an 8 months scenario, but you can do one thing today. And that's the season I'm in. You know, I'm going to do the Overtime podcast with Buck. And then after this is over, I'm going to talk to a church in Louisiana for Louisiana. Those are a couple of things today that I'm going to do to keep moving forward that generates hope in my life, because I can't get stuck.
Yeah, man, that's so good. And I feel like that is so encouraging, because there is, like, you know, tangibly just one thing. What's that one thing today? And whatever that is, to take a step. And as you were even saying, just inviting God in. Like, what's a new way to invite God in? You know, hey, just, you know, if it's been a while since you've been trying to figure out, you know, what's my way forward and how do I figure this out? Like, the question becomes, have you invited God into that? And maybe that's one new thing, just to pause 5 seconds and say, God, you know, what is my way forward? Would you show me that today? And begin looking for that.
Yeah.
It's great. I love that. Well, I've got a kind of a wrap up question here, and
Sure.
It's how I wrapped up on Sunday, where I said, you know, there's hope is an interesting thing, because it really comes from more of the will, if you will, like to go, you know, when there's conviction and you see something and you go, man, that's wrong. That's like a decision of the will that says, that's not right. And so it's more internal, and that kind of moral decision, if you will, that place of the will that chooses to, that's like where a lot of the hope comes from. And it's a daily thing. And so it's like you almost have to preach to yourself at a daily level, because life is going to come your way. It's going to, like, you know, beat you up, and you're going to have successes all at the same time. I mean, that's just, you know, as life. So I'm curious, in terms of maybe one of your habits, or is there something that you have said over the years to yourself that it just brings hope? Or is there something like, you know, a phrase, an idea that you remind yourself of on a consistent basis that really has helped you maintain hope?
A couple I would be happy to share. One is the best gift I can give the people in my life. Let's just take my family. The best gift I can give my family is a hopeful me, and to fight for that. A hopeful, inspired me. But I have to fight for hope many times. I have to fight to remain inspired. And I want to be able to bring my best me to my marriage, to my kids, and to my relationships. And so, but to see that as a gift, as a way to say, I'm going to love them, the people that I love dearly in my life. I'm going to fight to give the best version of me to them, because that's going to be a blessing to them. And then practically speaking, I love the phrase that a great day begins the night before. And, you know, we're talking about hope, but I do believe there are habits that can instill hope, as we've been talking about. A great book that I'm reading is it's called Atomic Habits. And and I think this is a good line to remember during the season. But we don't rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of our habits. So I can say that I'm going to be financially free in 2021, but if my financial habits of not saving for anything or overspending, if those are my consistent habits, then my goal will not be realized, because my habits are not in line with the goal. And so a habit that I want to lean into even more in 2021 is just to take 5 minutes and observe some things that I'm thankful for that happened in this day. And then what are some things that I would want to experience in the next day, and things that I feel like can bring me hope. Mm-hmm. And for example, they say in the book that if you will write out, let's just talk about working out. I will get up at 6 a.m. to work out. If you'll just write that down, it will help you get up out of bed more. I mean, hundreds of research documents, research things have said, if you'll just write that out the night before, it will help you get out of bed. And again, once we do that, and once we get the body moving, it's amazing to all of us that we just have a little bit better perspective on life that early in the morning. So I got to bring the most hopeful version of me to be the best version of the people in my life. And a great day begins the night before.
Yeah, man, I love that. Yeah. And again, it's just clarifying, it's like, as we started the conversation about 4, one of the greatest gifts I think you've given us here in Austin is a clarifying concept, a clarifying idea of, what are we for? And I think if we're going to, in the same vein, it's the idea to go, if one of the greatest gifts I can give my kids, I can give my wife, I can give Northpoint is the most hopeful version of me. Okay, what do I do? Yep. Clarifying. It's so incredibly good. So,
and it's okay to fight for it. And it's okay it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay. But you need to be able to have someone on the other side of you that can say that you can say that too.
I love that. Well, Jeff, hey, thank you for the time, man. This has been really helpful. And, I'm excited about, your future, and I'm hopeful for your future. And I just know what you've already done, the impact it's had on us here in Austin, and your leadership over the years, the impact it's had on me personally. I'm just to spend time like this is great. So I just want to thank you for your time, for your investment, and for your future leadership and what God has in store.
Thanks.
So just one last question. Anything in this discussion, anything as you are just sitting here and you're just prompted, and just like a last idea or last concept when it comes to hope?
I'll just reiterate, it really comes back to Jesus. I mean, he is our hope. And all this, by the way, all this is going to go away, but Jesus. And he is our hope. And so lean into that this season and walk with him. And again, my hope is for all of us at some point in 2021, someone will come up and say, hey, there's something different about you. It's just, man, with the challenges that you've had and the ups and downs that we've all had, there's just this steadiness, there's this peace, there's this hope. What is that? And my hope is that we would say, well, it's really not a what, it's really a who. And let me tell you how this works.
I love that. That is a great thing to hope for all of us. So thank you, man. Thanks again for your time, Jeff.
Thanks, Buck. For Austin.
Here we go.